Welcome back to our top 10 games of 2021 list here on Game Wisdom. For today, as our thumbnail and videos proudly titled, this is going to be my number 9th game. Not to be too confused, that is the number 8th game in this major franchise. So without further ado, let us talk about why Resident Evil 8 is on my top 10 list. So following the somewhat commercial and critical success of Resident Evil 7, fans were left wondering what was going to happen to Resident Evil as a franchise. We had the amazing Resident Evil 2 remake and the of Resident Evil 3 remake. And with RE8, well, we got more of RE7 for better and worse. Once again starring Ethan Iron Hands Winters. And RE8 is a game that it gets on my list first for being a survival horror game released in the year of 2021. We had Tormented Souls come out this year, and it is definitely a love letter to the late 90s, early 2000s survival horror craze, but it didn't really do enough, I think, to elevate that design to make it on the list this year. With Resident Evil 8, I found the middle of the game to be the best part of it. Everything from after the Vampire Castle to the factory, or before the factory, worked for me. And I think there is a market for this, not exactly open world, but more of a wide space survival horror design. Everything about exploring the village, looking for supplies, dealing with the lichen and those bird gargoyle things worked for me. I even like the upgrade system of hunting for food and giving it to the Duke. And, making Ethan's hands even more mightier. But the game itself definitely feels more like a chapter-based format, with each chapter having very distinctive elements and gameplay to it. And the dollhouse worked really well for me. Again, it's an area that you can really only experience one time, but that's how survival horror works. You really can only experience it one time. But I was really hoping for more puzzle aspects, such as the videotapes in RE7 and some of the DLC banned footage stuff. And maybe we'll get that with DLC in RE8, we don't know. But I really enjoyed that part of it, and it's unfortunate that there weren't more, but again, it's very hard to extend horror like that out over an 8 to 10 hour experience. And the lake itself, I think, had a really good balance of normal enemies to, of course, fighting the giant fish. With that said, one of the things I said in my review of RE8 was that I felt structurally Resident Evil 7 was the better game. But Resident Evil 8 doesn't have as many low points to it. RE7 has higher highs but lower lows. Everything after the true Jack fight in Resident Evil 7 fell flat for me. Hated the ship, hated the mines, the whole, even just quote-unquote final boss didn't work. The only thing after the first half of the game that worked was the DLC when we got the Power Glove. RE8 is structured, I think, far more mechanically than RE7 was. And you can really see, I guess, the wires behind the curtain in a sense. It's even more event trigger focused, I think, than RE7. There are several areas where the solution to fighting all these enemies is to literally walk over here, they all despawn, walk back, and you're done. And I do think the boss designs in RE8 they're just okay. I think RE2 Remake of kind of the recent Resident Evil games has my favorite bosses, with having more of those, not exactly puzzle aspects, but ways of rewarding the player for fighting the boss to kill them quicker. The fish guy in RE8, that's just tank fight the boss. Not to be confused with the actual tank fight boss that occurs later in the game. Now, with that said, there are things that keep it from getting higher on the list. It is more, I think, well-rounded than RE7, but it doesn't really, I think, have anything that I went, oh my god, I'm in love with this game over. I found the entire first quarter of the game to be the worst aspects of it. So, sorry, all the tall vampire lady fans watching this video. The whole Castle Dimitrescu didn't really do much for me. The whole first part of the game would be like an assault. I hated that section, and it is despised on Village of Shadow difficulty. But I was really hoping for more. Everyone kind of bemoaned the lack of a really good Mercenaries mode. I'm the same way. But there just really wasn't anything that I could put my finger on and say, wow. And I'm still waiting for Resident Evil to kind of, again, still, I guess, get back to its survival horror roots. And it just kind of, again, still seems caught between two masters. And while I think the style has been established at this point, I kind of am still not a fan of how they're doing all these contortions to try and fit everything back into the mainland or mainline Resident Evil story. With how Mother Miranda somehow orchestrated Umbrella, and just how many ways they're trying to have the old Resident Evil come back in the new one. So, with that said, I enjoyed Resident Evil 8, but didn't enjoy enough to rank higher on my list. So, that's going to do it for number 9. So as always, do all the liking and subscribing for these videos, and come back for our next piece, taking a look at, well, my number 8 game of 2021. Come back for daily discussions on game design here, and on game wisdom, where we learn science of games. Until next time, take care.